Welcome to Freed on Business. He grew up in South Florida, has been in business here since the early 90s, and has closed over $3 billion in deals. He's seen it all. He always has an opinion, and he's always ready to share it. Informed, entertaining, and connected, he has his finger on the pulse of South Florida's business community. He's Jim Freed, and this is Freed on Business.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Freed on Business. Really appreciate everybody joining us today. We've got a tremendous lineup. We've got Pat O'Connell. Pat is the big wig over at EWM. He basically runs their condo sales and a whole bunch of other stuff. We're going to talk about what the status is of the actual South Florida housing market. It's still pretty hot. We'll talk about what's going on in the good neighborhoods that he works in, the neighborhoods he works in, and what the sales pace is. I think it's a supply and demand issue there. We're also going to talk about the current condo market, as well as what's going on with the new condo law and its impact on condo sales and liquidity. Then we're going to have Regan Marock on. Regan's specialty is the evaluation of the older condos and certifying them on the 40-year certification and helping them figure out what to do if the condo board decides that they need to take action to either have a special assessment or place the condo building on the market. So as always, we want to thank our sponsors for over a decade, Warren Henry. Thank you to Larry Zinn, Eric Day, Warren Zinn, and the rest of the team over at Warren Henry. Love going to see them. Always feel like family. And now let's start the show. Regan, Mr. Mendoza. I don't know. This is the one that's really going to get me. I got to call everybody by their last name on this one. Mr. Mendoza, please bring on Pat and Mr. Marock. There he is. There they are. I got Regan and Reagan. It's going to mess me up for at least a decade here. So I'm just going to call everybody by their last name. Pat, sorry if I gave you a promotion or a demotion, but that's the place that you hold in my psyche. The marketplace. You sit on the top of EWM. How many brokers do you have working for you?
So Berkshire Hathaway EWM right now in South Florida is about 700 realtors and then 50 plus staff.
Okay, so you have a finger on the marketplace. You have offices throughout South Florida. Dade, Broward, do you have offices in Palm Beach?
We have an office on Worth Avenue in Palm Beach, yes.
I say that qualifies. I think that qualifies then. So, and Mr. Marock, welcome back to the show. You've been on talking about condos and condo management before. Thank you for being here today and helping us really get some good insight onto what's really going on. This show is all about bursting myths. First, Pat, let's talk about what the status of the market is. I heard that basically the buyers have switched from 80% Latin American and 20% U.S. non-South Florida to now 80% non-U.S. South Florida and 20% Latin America. Is that true, and why is that happening?
Well, Jim, yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. And this has been, I think this trend began before the pandemic, but I can tell you the last couple of years, we just had great, attention from the rest of the country, mostly the Northeast, very much also in Californians moving to South Florida, which has really helped to keep our inventory moving, both in single family homes and in our condo space as well. It's a lot of companies, frankly, that are moving here from both of those locations, bringing their people. That is really keeping that momentum going. Across the U.S. right now, in the industry, the general feeling is that the East is still pretty hot and moving. The West is beginning to slow. And Miami, I think, when you look at the Eastern United States, is even more of an outlier because we still have just such a net gain of residents on a daily basis here that the pressure is continuing. When you look at our market overall, it's great because here we are, beginning of April, we've got Q1 2023 in the books. We can compare it to Q1 2022. And year over year, quarter over quarter, our inventory in Miami-Dade County, we're talking about everything, right? Single family homes and condos together is actually down 50%, 50% over last year. At the same time, the number of sales happening, which I think there's a direct correlation to just what's actually available and the lack of available inventory, we are the sales are down 45%. So it's an interesting place to be in because the median price here is continuing to go up. So
Yeah.
it's it's not a typical kind of market we're in right now. In South Florida, the heat is still on. We still have buyers coming from everywhere. There's not a lot to buy, and we're just looking at a just a very unique place in the market.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. I think the word is outlier. I'd like to point out that old people like me realize that the imbalance has just swung back to what the historic balance was, which is a lot of folks from the Northeast. I think that the California thing is something I saw and learned about when the Florida Chamber of Commerce talked about this at the U.S. Center for Real Estate Studies conference I was at about a month ago now. And they said that the number 2 state for relocation from both an asset base and a head count is California. Really didn't. I understood that sort of for Miami. Didn't really understand it for Orlando, but I think Orlando's technology is something that we always forget. They have the gaming industry, they have the film and media industry, and now they have the Space Coast industry. So, Pat, what are you seeing as far as our topic today is really the condo market? What are you seeing as far as the impact of the new condo law? What's the name of that condo law, Mr. Marock? I can never get it right.
SB4.
Huh?
SB4.
And what does SB4 mean? What is its goal? What are to come from, and why is it important?
Sure. So, Jim, after the tragedy in Surfside, obviously action needed to be taken to safeguard buildings, and over time, committees were put together, and SB4 was the legislation that came out that basically provides for what buildings need to do now to be safe. As far as reserve funding, a lot of buildings don't have reserves, which then puts them in the position of not having money to fix the building to make it safe. So SB4 in summary was there to make sure that things after the Surfside tragedy, things got better from a safety perspective.
Okay, what it really did was it proved that the condo model doesn't work anymore and that it's completely broken. It never did, by kicking the can down the road and making somebody else pay for somebody's sinking fund costs. So now, Pat, I know that all the commercial brokers are knocking on the doors of all the old condos. We talked about Project Brisket back in the day because they all smell like brisket. What are you seeing? Are the condo boards reaching out to you? I know that you've got a lot of people that live in these condos that work for you. I'm sure they're being asked questions as experts. What are you advising your teams to say when these condo boards approach them? And I'll start with, are the condo boards really approaching them? That's a big leap of faith I made before you even talked about it. Pat, how's that for a whole bunch of stuff to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to bite off and chew. So, you know what, though, before I start, just a point of clarification, I want to make sure that I said this correctly, that our overall housing inventory has increased 50% since last year, and sales are down 45%.
Yeah, you gave the reverse impression.
Okay, good. So, and I thought after I said it, so I'm putting that back out there as a reset. Inventory up 50%, sales down 45%. So,
is that interest rate driven or ridiculous ask price driven?
I think it's a combination of things. I think that we were at a historically low level of inventory this time last year, right? The interest rates were still very, very low, right? So we had that much more activity in the marketplace, and a lot of people were hurrying to take advantage of those pandemic era interest rates. That inventory has slowly built over the last year. But here's the funny thing: we're still at a very low level, right? When I'm saying that our inventory is up, a year ago at this time, we were at a month and a half of inventory total. So if we stop putting new inventory on the market, it would take a month and a half to sell everything. Right now, we're at 4.5 months, which is better, right? I mean, that is certainly bringing a little more balance, but really to have a really balanced market between buyers and sellers, we need at least 6 months of inventory. So we're still not quite there yet. Oh, we have another
Okay.
visitor on
All
our
right,
show.
Mr.
Apologies,
Mendel,
we got a
okay,
guest.
Mr. Marock was joined by the boss.
right.
Okay, so what's going on now, Pat? Are people really freaked out about their? I live in a condo. They just made a special assessment. A lot of the people here are on fixed incomes, and they still have money, but they had to make a downstroke for the special assessment. Mr. Marock told us about the fact that they're getting real-time, real-life estimations that they now, by law, have to address. Are you seeing any ripple effect in your world?
So, and I took a little bit off course there with my correction, but
My job is to keep you between the lines.
So, I think that this is obviously this is a building specific thing. I think the buildings that were built 30, 40 years ago are feeling far more of the impacts today. And it's interesting because we have buyers in the market for these units, right? But it's more of the investors now, I think, looking to snatch up the units in the older condo buildings in order to be poised for that day when the building possibly will terminate, because the cost of ownership just gets to be too high, right? It's no longer sustainable for the residents. And so what we haven't seen yet with that is the downward pressure on values. And I say yet because I think that is invariably what will happen when some of these older buildings get the true cost of ownership through the increase in property insurance and the required collection of reserve funds. It's going to drive a lot of folks to sell. And obviously, when the inventory increases that way, prices will certainly stabilize, if not go down in many of these buildings.
Well, Pat, you mentioned a couple different things that would drive value. First of all, the fact that if these buildings have violations, Fannie and Freddie won't make loans in them. That'll stop the ability for most of the people at the lower end of the market to sell that rely on Fannie and Freddie. And now when I say lower end, we're talking those folks are making loans close to $1 million now. So that's pretty much all these older buildings, at least on the lower floors. And then the investors are probably buying in to create blocking positions so that they can execute green mail when people want to accumulate them. That's the way I see this thing playing out right now. Back to you, Pat.
Well, I mean, it's basically in short order what I was saying is that, the cost of ownership will continue to increase. Folks that have been able to afford their assessments for the last however many years, 10, 15, 20 years, will no longer be able to do so. They'll have no choice but to sell. And the buyer out there looking for those units is most likely the investor who does have the ability to sit and wait, put a tenant in the unit, and then at some point hope for that termination that will give them the big payday, frankly.
Project Brisket. So that sets the table up for you, Mr. Marock. So now let's start with, I sit on a condo board. I really don't know what's going on. I don't want to get sued. I want to be compliant. What do I do? Who do I call? I'm sitting here befuddled. I've never had to deal with this before. I've just been kicking the can down the road for a while.
Right. So Jim, if I may start, I think you bring up a point. You mentioned something at the beginning about old buildings. I think it's important for everyone to understand that not every building is a candidate for condo termination. So a lot of buildings have reserves. They're in a position to maintain their association. For those associations that are candidates, the type of things that people are looking at is obviously the current safety, the physical plant, what the shape of the building is in.
Life safety?
Yes, life safety, correct. The financial position, for me, I say over the next 5 years, and their ability to pay as things come along. As you mentioned, Jim, there's no more kicking the can down the road. And basically the temperature of the residents, because in an association, it's not like institutional. it's everyone's professional. You got all kinds of people in associations, and you have to understand the temperature of the residents. Some residents are going to take the position that, look, we will find the funding and we'll stick it out. And the others will say, you know what, this sounds like a good idea. We can make a premium here. You know, we're not going to get stuck with a bunch of special assessments, and we can find something else. I foresee the need, and this is something that I'm working on, for boards, association boards, to have somewhat of a liaison, someone that can work on their behalf with both the association and the developers and funders, to basically go into a building and have professionals, the physical plan professionals, the engineers, look at the shape of the building, have the financial folks take a look at the finances of the building, projections over the next 5 years, and then basically be able to, and thirdly, talk to the residents, hold town halls, give them all the information and let them make an informed decision to the board. Because at the end of the day, the residents elect the board of directors. Then it's really going to come to the board of directors making the ultimate decision, that's what they are elected to do, on what to do with the association. So there are a bunch of factors that go into this, but if done properly, it can be done responsibly.
Okay, so let's work it backwards now, because we talked about Pat. Pat sits on the top of 700 plus brokers in the Tri-County area, has offices all over, including Worth Avenue. Tell us briefly about your background and why somebody would work with you to do this, and then we're going to take a break after that.
Absolutely. So, Jim, I've been in the association industry for over 17 years. I came in right before the 06, 07 real estate crunch. I went through the condo boom. And then I've been now, up until recently, through the institutional acquisition of many management companies here in the marketplace. I, from the perspective of having a good team, trust the engineers, I trust the CPAs, I bring in the experts to work with me. And my goal is basically just to be administration. That's what property management is, with these two groups.
Okay, so basically you come in, you're a professional, you've been through this before, from the mechanical, from both the buildings mechanics and the processes mechanics. So you're really coming in and you're acting as advisor. You're helping people on the boards make sure that they can pick best practices and best people to work with on those practices. And we're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about what's really going on. And is this the time to work with a team such as Mr. Marock is prescribing? And I got a feeling that Pat and his team can add value to what Mr. Marock is doing. I'll never get the first name right. I'm just going to call you Mr. for the whole thing. And Mr. Mendoza, that's why, that set me back like 6 months when I had you and Mendoza at the same time. Mr. Mendoza, it's yours. Let's take a quick break. Let's talk about cars, and then we'll be right back with more great information about what's happening in condos. This is great for the condo boards. You should send this to the condo boards, Mr. Marock. Mendoza, time. Oh, you caught me taking notes. Got some really good stuff to ask them in the next segment. You'll make sure you want to stay for that. I want to thank again our friends at Warren Henry for sponsoring the podcast. They've been with us for well over a decade. We've been getting cars for over a generation. My mom, my beautiful wife, Vivian, lots of my friends, all of us get our cars from Warren Henry. And why do we do that? Because when you're looking to buy or lease a car, you always want to make sure you get the best deal that you can. That's why we go to Warren Henry. Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, Jaguar, Lincoln, they sell all of those up at 150. Oh, I should get my hat. Maybe I'll do that for the next one. They sell all of those up at 151st and Biscayne. It's a gorgeous store. They keep remodeling it, making it better all the time. If you want an Audi, they can sell you one of those from their store up in Gainesville. I've been up at that store. It's also gorgeous. They've got incredible cars up there. I love those cars. They're beautiful. Down in South Dade, they've got a new Land Rover, Range Rover store. And down in the Keys, they've got a store that sells all of them, all the different brands, Jeep, everything. So why would you work with Warren Henry? Well, they've got all those great cars, and they all come with the Warren Henry Advantage. That's a long list of services. I say it on all the podcasts. Suffice it to say, they get a loaner car. They replace your keys if you lose them. They will polish up your rims if you scrape them up. They've got a whole bunch of other great things they do. They'll guarantee you're getting the best value when you trade in your car. They'll guarantee you're getting the best price on your new or leased car or used car. They will give you 3 days to make sure you like your car. Believe me, everybody does. If you don't, you can turn it in. Nobody ever really does that. So join me, my mom, my beautiful wife, Vivian. We're all members of that Warren Henry family. You should be too. Always the best price, always the best service, always Warren Henry. Got all kinds of people watching. I want to thank Brian for giving the shout out on LinkedIn. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate your support of the show. Reach out to me. I kind of know what's going on. It's a dynamic time in the real estate market. I was just meeting with a bunch of bankers. They were telling me how the banks are pulling back in certain categories and focusing on the clients they have. And once they reach a certain concentration with those clients can't get funding. So it's harder and harder to get financing. Rates are going up. Prime is at 8. People are doing construction loans now at 300 over SOFR, which is closing in on 8. So there really is difficult to get positive leverage, which means that your interest rate is higher than your return on cost. Basically, these projects were made to pencil out with lower rates at 6.5. So they have to pencil out now with higher rates, higher costs, and they have to pencil out at 8+. That's really hard to do. Pref equity is becoming more and more needed in these deals, and I have pref equity. You can give me a call, reach out to me. I've got pref equity. Also, everybody knows I'm doing my next my syndication 3.0 thing where we're digitizing and tokenizing real estate. We're getting a lot of drag on that from operators who want to find new ways to capitalize their deals. It's a way to raise equity for the cash-in refinancing that things like office buildings are going to need to fill the gap between their current loan and their new loan that they're going to need. And of course, we're also working with all kinds of sources, broker-dealers, RIAs, and investment advisors that talk to institutions and individual investors to create the liquidity and sales pull that's all going to need. Of course, I've also got my regular financing going on, working on a bunch of build-to-rent stuff right now. So reach out to me, give me a call, DM me, text me. We've got clients from all over the world, New Zealand, Brazil, Australia, Canada. We're doing business with all of them. And why do they do business with me? Because they know my personal brand is that I self-actualize by helping other people achieve their dreams and goals. I do that by helping them solve their problems and bringing them peace of mind, because whenever you call me, it's always all about you. And now back to the show.
Welcome back to Freed on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Freed or at Freed on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Freed1. Now, back to your host, Jim Freed.
Yeah, I fooled Mr. Mendoza that time because usually I stop talking when I say it's all about you, but I said now back to the show, so now he's got to take a pause. Always trying to make it interesting for Mr. Mendoza. Hey, bring back Pat O'Connell and Mr. Marock. There he is. Hey, what happened to the boss, Mr. Marock? Loved having the boss.
He just came to show he was boss, and then he went back to his room.
All right, that's typically what they do. So we've been talking about the condo market, the investment condo sales, block condo sales, what happens in a downturn. And Mr. Marock, I don't even know if you were alive when I had my company Condo Vest. Pat was probably a teenager. And what we did was we bought and sold blocks of condos. We did it with money from overseas, from Canada. It was private equity money. So I know how this game is played. We did the management. We did the leasing. Then the next time around, gosh, was that after the Lehman Brothers crash, and we were having the big glut on Brickell? That's when I got my start in radio. So that's 13, 14 years ago. Because the big question they asked me was, what's going on in the condo market, especially on Brickell? The condo associations at that time were underfunded. They were losing their cable. They were losing their management. They were losing a lot of different things. And I said, which one of the exploding cigars do you want to talk about first? That was the famous line that got me involved. Pat is smirking because he sort of remembers that. Pat, are you seeing any of the condo associations that are underfunded and going to have a problem with keeping the lights on, or has that problem at least been addressed?
I think where we are right now, in the last couple of years of COVID, we've actually seen some of our larger buildings achieve a higher level of owner occupancy than they had before. Some of those investor units have turned over to owners, which obviously makes it easier to collect those condo fees. So I don't have any, personal experience with condos right now that are not collecting their funds and shutting off the cable. And I smirk because I remember those days all too well. We had squatters moving into some of our empty condo units in downtown Miami. I mean, just unheard of things. I think we're safely past that at this point. I think that there is enough money focused on South Florida right now from mostly domestically, but still there are some international buyers here that we're just in a much better place. And it's not leveraged. I mean, Jim, better than anybody else right now. There's so much cash in this market and buyers coming in and paying cash that they are just more stable, right? The buyers are more stable and therefore the buildings, I think, are at a more stable level. The ones that are managed correctly and the ones that were collecting reserves before, perhaps, and not having to layer that on right now, which is going to cause a lot of the heartburn for people.
Okay, so back to Mr. Marock. We're going to go back and forth a little bit now, and then I'll go out of order probably when I feel like it. Mr. Marock, tell me a little bit about, I'm the condo board president. Actually, my mom is. We've just been red flagged. We've got some building violations that's causing us to be illiquid because we can't fund with a Fannie or Freddie loan, which a lot of people are using. And even though Pat's talking about people buying all cash, and I want to talk about also the changing demographic in the buildings a little bit more, Pat. But Mr. Marock, what does somebody do? Why is your phone going to ring from one of these condo associations?
Well, Jim, it's, I agree, lights are not being switched off or anything like that, the cable. I think the SB4 law was brought in and the kinks are still being worked out. However, to your point, if you're not up to code, you don't get insurance. If you don't get insurance, you don't get bank financing. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's something that boards have to be aware of. Now, my phone is going to ring, I think, because I'm fair. I've been in it long enough. I've seen enough on the real estate side, and a board of directors is going to want to speak to someone like me because I'm going to deal with people like you with regards to funding. And they know that when I give my assessment, which is included with all the experts that work with me, it's
bad term using assessment there. Your evaluation.
Evaluation. You're right. When I give that, I'm also not telling them to make a decision one way or the other. I'm giving them the information and I'm saying, now you have it, okay? And you need to make the decision.
Okay, but that creates a liability. And you mentioned a term that we really didn't talk about much, which is insurance. My building just had a big special assessment because the insurance went up so dramatically. And again, some of the people, they've lived here for 30, 40 years. They own all cash, but they're still on fixed income. So when these special assessments come through, even if the fixed income, they don't want to break a bond or something to pay an unexpected expense. Maybe they want to break it now so they can redo it at a higher rate, but that's a different story. So what's been going on in the insurance market down here in Florida? Is it really a lot of pressure on these buildings, Regan, Mr. Marock?
It's Jim. It's a mixture. You know, what the insurance agents will point out is that if you look at it over a 10-year period, it's actually not that bad. Now, with that said, that doesn't really help us if we don't have the reserves to pay now that rates are high. Props to Miami-Dade County for coming out with those programs for the lower fixed income folks, and basically saying, if you need help with your special assessments, we'll help you. But yes, it's a lot of pressure. So that's why I recommend that boards, even if they're not feeling pain yet, do this evaluation now. You know, don't wait until the lights and the cable are, that's what got these buildings, these associations into the mess in the first place. Not thinking, 1, 2, 5 years down the line.
So, Pat, I want to talk a little bit about the changing demographic in these buildings. Not just the fact that a lot of these original owners are getting older and requiring extra parking spaces for their full-time helpers that they have now from both a health and household standpoint. But more than that, the fact that the buildings, we'll just use Brickell and Coconut Grove as an example. The people that are living in the buildings are getting younger. There's a complete demographic evolution. They're more from the Northeast and less from Latin America. And as I said earlier, that's something that I saw in the early stages when I lived here as a young kid. And this was a pipeline from the Northeast. Are you seeing more buyers skewing younger and having, high-paying jobs? Maybe it's a hybrid work from home, work from the office. The office is on Brickell or in Coconut Grove or in Coral Gables. And so they're looking for that and the concentration of schools. How's all that playing out?
So that's interesting. Not to specifically call it any one age group. I mean, we're seeing buyers really from every age bracket. I mean, from the older retirees who want to be close to the action, all the way to students starting at University of Miami or maybe entering their second or third year where they can't have on-campus housing and their parents are opting to purchase them an apartment rather than paying the very high rents right now. Here in the city of Coral Gables, where I sit, University of Miami is certainly facing this struggle right now because a one-bedroom apartment in the city can rent easily for $3,100, $3,200 a month.
That's a small one. That's like
not even a large
600-700 square feet.
So because of that, the parents that have the ability to do so are looking to purchase. And one of my projects that I'm working right now is seeing a lot of UN parents at this moment coming in, looking at that purchase option. And a few of them are pulling the trigger because over a couple of years, it makes a lot of sense to just, own it, let their child live there, and then either keep it as an investment and rent it out at these high rates down the road or to sell. So kind of looping back around to your original question, I can't say that necessarily the ownership of any building is skewing one way or the other age-wise, but it's definitely more owner occupants than we've had here previously. We don't have many of the, kind of going in a different direction. Some buildings are currently for sale and delivering that have been built to accommodate Airbnb. And those are the ones that have become super attractive for investors because they can basically control their own destiny with Airbnb and put tenants in the unit, or they can come and stay there or so forth. But a lot of the other buildings that were historically more investor driven now, there's been a bit of a flip to more of the owner occupancy, which is good. I mean, that brings stability to a lot of these buildings that were built, let's say, in the last cycle, right? In the 07, 08, 09 period where we had that glut where so much was investor owned. Now it's not as much.
Well, I think that also makes what we're really seeing is that people are clustering in the neighborhoods. Even north of downtown, on the downtown side, you have Publix now. You have all the retail there. You have it on the south side of the river on Brickell. My wife, when she was a college student just a couple of years ago, I love her so much. She lived on Brickell in a fancy condo that her parents rented for her and then commuted in That commute is getting longer and harder to do. I think that's going to benefit Coral Gables, US 1, maybe a little bit in Coconut Grove. Condo Vest is calling. He must have heard me. And so I think that what we're seeing is a new evolution in what's going on. We're seeing the new buyers come in. We're seeing the locals being priced out. Pat, we haven't even talked about what's going on with the locals. What's the psychology you're seeing with the local people that want to either sell their house and move to a condo, or sell their house and move to another market, or even young people that want to buy a house here? Are they able to stay here? Or do they have to move to someplace like Atlanta to afford a house? Softball.
Well, I have some personal experience with this because my middle daughter is in the process of moving to Georgia, just because the cost of the taxes and insurance where they're looking to move is about a third of what they're paying here in Miami-Dade County today in their home in Cutler Bay. So I think that we are seeing some folks staying put right now that would otherwise want to sell and move and either downsize or right size or whatever, because they've got those pandemic era interest rates, 2.5%, 3%. And to sell and buy right now, I mean, what they would be looking at for the new interest rate. So I think there's some of that happening. A lot of the folks that I work with in my job are not the locals. I oversee our relocation division. So it's a lot of people coming into South Florida, as well as the condominium developers that I work with. Many of the buyers today are from elsewhere that are buying our new condo product. So as far as the local folks here, I think people that bought pre-COVID are sitting pretty, right? I mean, with the upswing in prices that happened really back in 21 and into 22, folks that bought prior to that are sitting on equity and probably sitting on a pretty kind interest rate. And so they may be a little bit less inclined to sell and move.
All right.
Something else driving them to do that.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with everybody's final thoughts on the topic. Mr. Mendoza, it's yours. It's just one of those days. My phone just doesn't stop ringing. And for that, I say, thank God. When you're looking to buy or lease a car, you want to get every advantage that you can. I want to thank our sponsors for the podcast, Warren Henry. They've been sponsoring first the radio show and now the podcast for well over a decade. They've got great vehicles. My wife drives one. My mom drives one. I drive one. It's tremendous. They treat you like family. They're wonderful people. I go out to Supercar Saturdays, which will be in about 10 days from now. So it's a great event, and they're great people, and you get to feel their energy. And remember, they've got stores at 151st and Biscayne. There they sell Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, Jaguar, and Lincoln. Down in South Dade, they sell. They have a Land Rover, Range Rover store down there. Down in the Keys, they got a store that sells all the great nameplates, and of course, up in Gainesville, they sell Audis. What do all that have in common? Well, they always sell a great car. They always give you a great secondary service. They give you something called the Warren Henry Advantage that helps make sure you're treated like family. They give you a loaner car if you need it. They for service. They replace your keys if you lose them. They will polish up your rims and make your car look great in that respect if you have a problem. They will also guarantee that you're getting a great price on your trade-in, a great price on your new car, lease or buy. They will give you 3 days to make sure you like your car. If you don't, they let you exchange it. These are all great factors and reasons why you should be a member of the Warren Henry family. You should join me, my mom, my beautiful wife, Vivian, lots and lots of my friends. We're all members of the Warren Henry family. You should be too. Always the best price, always the best service, always Warren Henry. Hey, everybody. You've heard my phone ringing throughout the show. I've got a bunch of people calling me. I've got investors from Israel that can't stop reaching out to me. They've asked me to go help them reach out to some landowners and see if I can get those landowners to sell. I also have another group that calls me. They're helping me to fund both debt and equity for build to rent housing throughout the state of Florida. What do those people have in common? Well, what they have in common is the fact that they reach out to me to help me, to let me help them. I bring my gray hair and my knowledge. Sometimes when I'm talking to the landowners out there in the field, I bring an empathy that they like. Water bottle today kind of says it all. And what do all these things that I do, that illustrates my personal brand, that I self-actualize by helping other people achieve their dreams and goals. I do that by solving problems for them. I bring them peace of mind. So reach out to me, DM me, call me, Real Estate Capital, Real Estate Investment Sales, my new syndication platform. Reach out to me. Why? Because whenever you call me, it's always all about you.
Welcome back to Freed on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Freed or at Freed on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Freed1. Now, back to your host, Jim Freed.
All right, we're back with our final thoughts here. Mr. Mendoza, where are our guests? There they are. Hey, Pat. Hey, Mr. Marock. Now, is it Regan or Reagan?
It's Regan.
Oh, forget it. Okay. So,
I like Reagan, though.
Huh? Yeah, you'll answer as long as I don't call you late for dinner. So final thoughts. Regan, tell me a little bit about the Senate bill and why people should reach out to you and the impact that you can have to help make their lives a little easier.
Look, my motto in life is be informed. And, by doing an evaluation of the process we've discussed today, you don't have to make a decision, but at least now the board of directors has a map and they can speak to the residents, right? Because what happens a lot, Jim, is boards and the residents, the line of communication is not great. And if the residents had all the information, they might be inclined to make better decisions, i.e., if the experts put in the evaluation, look, you really should be talking to a developer, people like Patrick and termination funding agents like you, Jim, they might be more amenable to it. The biggest piece for the institutional side of this to understand is that residents are normal people. They're not, they might be business in their own lives, but for that's their home. So I think that's something that we can do a lot if we keep everyone informed, Jim.
Okay. Knowledge is power. That's your message. Pat, kind of wrap it up for us. Tell us what the trends are and the time frame you see some of this stuff happening.
Well, gosh, and from the broker in the room, I guess I would say that, the best time to buy in South Florida was yesterday. So it's always, it's always a good time here, really, in the end. We're seeing urgency right now because there's the perception that interest rates may climb yet higher this year. And the idea that you can go out today and purchase and maybe get 6.25, 6.5, something in that range is better than what could perhaps be 7% by the end of the year, right? So that is keeping some buyers out there in the marketplace looking, even those that need financing. I think going forward, when it comes to our condominiums particularly, knowledge is absolutely going to be power. And this goes back to what Regan was saying. The buyers and their brokers need to be more astute. They need to ask more questions. They need to look more carefully at the condominium budgets and their reserve accounts and all of those things that are really going to determine down the road the viability of the building and the ongoing health of the condominium. And I'm thinking that as time goes on, the real estate industry is good at this, at training people to make sure that they know to ask the questions. I just think that this is still something that's evolving right now in the industry. And I think that everyone involved with condos in South Florida is still getting used to this new normal, which may yet change again, right? I mean, I think that the legislature is looking at even more measures to protect condo owners and to just make it a more sort of viable process of having a group of homeowners govern themselves, assess themselves, and just make all that happen in a much more transparent way.
Okay, well, since it's my show, I get the last word.
Of course.
And you know, I'll end with where I started, that the condo model is a broken model. The legislature's trying to fix it, always a recipe for disaster whenever you let a politician get involved. What we're seeing is forced gentrification of a lot of these buildings. It's creating opportunities for some, heartache for others. And I really think that the decision will be building by building, which is what I always used to say about urban redevelopment. It'll be block by block. Everything will be different. Everything will be unique. That's why people need to work with Mr. Marock and his team. I'm proud to, you know, have you say I'll be a member of your team. Pat, it's great to work with you on this stuff. Your people are always professional, as are you. My best to big Ron Sheffield, the guy who brought us together. Shout out to Ron Sheffield, the head of EWM Berkshire Hathaway down here. We'll have Mr. Marock on again sometime in the future to talk about how this is all evolving. Pat, you'll be on sooner rather than later talking about the market. And I want to thank everybody for watching today. I want to remind everybody we're sponsored by Warren Henry and the University of Florida Center for Real Estate Studies. Warren Henry's been our sponsor for a decade, UF just about as long, actually. So thank you for providing the show with that stability. I want to remind everybody we drop a new podcast every Wednesday around noon. You can always catch old episodes on freedombusiness.com. You'll see that we talk about a lot of different trends that you'll like. And here's the wrap up, Mr. Mendoza. I'm going to get it right this time. I want to remind everybody that the person that wants to do something finds a way. The other finds an excuse. Now go out there and make it happen. God bless you and God bless America. Mr. Mendoza, the rest of the show is yours.